Early compounding looks broken. Your investment portfolio barely moves and the balance sits flat. And it feels like your contributions are doing all the work. Then, at a specific point, the math flips and your returns begin exceeding the money you add. This shift is predictable and it happens at three net worth milestones where compounding begins working meaningfully. In this video, I'll break down the exact milestones, the mechanics behind each inflection point, and the behavioral patterns that cause most investors to quit just before compounding takes over. Before we get into the milestones, we need to understand why early compounding feels broken and why almost every investor misinterprets this phase. Slow progress doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means the mathematics are behaving exactly as expected. In the early years, compound interest has almost no base to work with, and returns are calculated on a small capital foundation. So the market contributes almost nothing, but your deposits carry the entire load. Take a simple example. Invest $100 per month at an 8% annual return for 3 years, and you will contribute $3,600, and compounding will add just over $400. But you're doing 89% of the work, and that's not underperformance. That's the structural reality of compounding before the base is meaningful. And this is the phase where most investors quit. And it's the worst possible moment to stop because the math is about to permanently flip. Extend the same strategy for 25 years, assuming the same 8% return, and the equation reverses. Annual growth begins exceeding your contributions, and your capital compounds faster than you can save, and returns become the dominant driver of your net worth. The first shift happens at 10,000. The first net worth milestone is 10,000 invested, a threshold most people dismiss, but one that carries real structural significance. At this stage, almost all growth comes from contributions rather than market returns. Discipline matters more than performance, and your savings rate and consistency drive nearly all the progress. For example, investing $100 per month at an 8% annual return takes roughly 6.5 years to reach 10,000. Of that total, 7,800 comes from contributions and just over 2,000 from growth. Contributions dominate the growth profile, and that's the expected structure of compounding at this stage. If you stopped contributing entirely and left the 10,000 invested for 15 years at the same 8% annual return, it would grow to roughly 32,000. No additional deposits, just compounding working on a base that's finally economically meaningful. Reaching 10,000 demonstrates three things: the discipline to live below your means, the consistency to maintain the habit when progress feels invisible, and the foundation where compounding begins doing real work. Remember, small contributions build meaningful wealth when given enough time. The 10,000 milestone validates the entire system, but it's only the foundation. The second shift is where the mathematics become undeniable. The second shift occurs at 100,000, the milestone Charlie Munger called the hardest in wealth building, and the mathematics explain exactly why. Let's say contributing 500 per month at an 8% annual return takes roughly 11 years to reach that level of capital, 100,000. Throughout the period, your deposits still carry most of the load. But once that base is established, the equation changes permanently. The next 100,000 arrives in roughly 6 years. Same contributions, same return, half the time. But not because your behavior changed, but because your capital base is now large enough to compound meaningfully. If you stopped contributing entirely at 100,000 and let the portfolio grow at the same 8% annual return, it will double in roughly 9 years on growth alone. This is the point where net worth stops being contribution driven and becomes capital driven. Your money begins doing more work than you do. And the third milestone is where compounding becomes the dominant force. At 1 million, the mathematics shift again. Contributions become economically irrelevant. At an 8% annual return, a 1 million portfolio generates roughly 80k in a single year, more than most people earn from employment. Your capital now works harder than you do. This is also where the 4% rule becomes directly applicable. Based on long-term market research, withdrawing 4% per annum, about 40k or a 1 million portfolio, adjusted for inflation, has historically sustained a 30-year retirement while preserving the principal. Your portfolio continues compounding even as you draw from it. This is financial independence built on mathematics, not speculation. Remember, every 1 million portfolio follows the same path: the 10,000 foundation, the 100,000 inflection, and the years of consistent contributions that came before them. Compounding doesn't require motivation. It requires consistency and time. If this helped you understand how wealth actually builds through compounding, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.